I didn't know there was another Hulk. Like there's the normal Hulk, right? The green one, right? He gets mad, like and then he becomes bigger, and he's green.
Cast Iron Brains, a podcast that lives by the diktat of the great Timothy Chalamet, the god that we always give 170%.
I give 170% in everything I'm doing. No but there. I'm giving it my all.
My name is Bob, sitting across the way from my good friend and co-host. That's Abe. How you doing tonight, Abe?
Doing well, Bob.
Yeah. Here we are. Lori's here too. How you doing tonight, Lori?
I guess I'm fine.
I guess she's fine. Tonight is Monday, February 17th, 2025. It's getting cold here as the polar vortex descends upon the middle of the country once again. We had scheduled or forecasted as of a few days ago, another like 8 inches of snow was supposed to hit us on Wednesday, and it was not something we were looking forward to after the last recent snowfalls. But now it's down to just less than an inch of expected precipitation. So I'm not too worried about the fact that my new snow shovel isn't coming from Amazon until Friday. I had to order a new snow shovel. It used to be with Amazon Prime, you'd get shit like the next day, or at worst, 2 days later. Now all of a sudden with my Amazon Prime, it's like, it'll be there in a week and you'll be fine. It's like, what do you mean? What are we paying for here?
What am I paying for?
Bezos? Why is it a week out for this fucking shovel? This is bullshit.
Maybe it's a special shovel.
It still has the Prime sticker. Like, if it says Prime next to it, it's supposed to be like 2 days.
Yeah. I wonder if it's there just so you can hit the button, and then they're like, we're just joking about that. It's not gonna be 2 days.
I was looking on there because it had other options. Like you go on Amazon, right, and you see the $44 or whatever manufacturer. It's like, but available at lower cost from different sellers. And I go and I click on the different sellers, and the same shovel was $39.99 from a third party. And then you click on the reviews, and it's like the first 3 reviews are like, the shovel came quickly, but it was in like 7 pieces and not like assemblable pieces. It was just severely fucked up. And so I tried to send it back, and they weren't terribly reliable. It's like, all right, I guess I'll pay the extra $6 to make sure I get it direct from the manufacturer, I guess. Abe, how was your weekend? You have a good weekend? An enjoyable holiday weekend?
That's right. I'm still in the weekend. I mean, it's President's Day today. On Saturday, I went to my nephew's basketball game. Finally, the season is coming to an end. I don't know how many dollars I've spent in this campaign.
You needed to get a season ticket.
I should. Next year, I'm going to get season tickets and better seats. But I'm watching this game, and it was late in the third quarter. These are 6-minute quarters that the kids are playing. This is 5-on-5 full court, right?
What's the age range here?
This is the 6th grade, so like 11, 12, okay. I don't know how old, around there. The score, mind you, this is the late third quarter of a basketball game, was 10-8. The
nice.
Team my nephew's in.
It's a close battle. What are you complaining about here?
A very low-scoring game. I think I counted, I don't know how many missed field goals there were, but I was looking at my brother, I was like, what is going on? Like, over the months that I've been coming to watch these things, I would think there'd be like incremental improvements.
Oh, no.
No such thing. But anyways, somebody on the other side, from the other team, I guess they did not like one too many, calls. Again, this is 10-8, very low-level basketball. Like, very low-level basketball. And this guy, who is sitting not too far from me for the other team, starts accusing the refs of being in the pockets of the team that I'm rooting for.
That's how it works.
And it's just the most absurd sequence of it. I'm like, what are you watching? Who is paying for I mean, I guess we're paying to get in here.
Is he being loud enough for the referee to know that he's being accused of chicanery?
Everyone can hear him. Like the scorekeepers, there were 2 refs, and I think one of them just kind of like looked, but they didn't pay him any mind. But it just kept on going back to this. Like, how come they're getting all the calls? How come it's like call something our way.
What was the score?
It was 10-8, and then it was like finally it got to 10-10, and everybody was like, "Oh, here we go, getting some action." It was very busy fourth quarter. There was like a 5-point run the other team had, and they ended up winning it. The guy got quiet after that somehow, but it was just very bizarre.
Sounds like he was working the refs, and it worked.
It wasn't any fouls. It was just the team. Those shots, they just kept on shooting and hoping for the best. There was like no real.
That sounds like
plan.
the NBA to me.
Basketball.
And some of those shots went in, and they were fortunate enough to win. But it just, no matter where you go, there's going to be some fan that thinks that refs are in the pockets of somebody.
This didn't happen to be a middle-aged white man, did it?
No, it was a middle-aged black man.
Yeah.
But, middle-aged dudes are pretty similar.
Yeah. The ongoing crisis in this country of anti-institutionalism abounds even in the sixth grade basketball gym, apparently.
That's right.
I went to a band practice for Calvin's band. And the only reason I bring that up is because there was a kid who came in like a little late from some game. Because the director said, "How was your game?" And the kid said, "It was 28-3."
They lost 28-3.
No, he won. He was on the winning team.
They won 28-3. Now the game is to figure out what fucking sport were you playing.
What sport? Because it's not football. Because football is over. And tennis doesn't count in those.
Like
I
that.
was what?
Also, it's definitely not tennis season.
Isn't it always?
Yeah, not here, though. Like, they're playing tennis.
You can play tennis inside. Yeah. Maybe squash. Maybe, I don't know. That's the thing.
He was playing basketball is the end of the story.
We're not
It's got to
sure.
be basketball, right? Yeah, because it can be. Yeah.
Why? That's too big of a difference.
No, that's just how it goes.
Oh,
with the youth basketball, all you need is one kid to be any good. And then all of a sudden your team is way better than the other team.
In a previous game that I attended, same sixth graders, it was 45-10 or something like that.
Ouch. That sucks.
And I was asking, like, what is the mercy rule here?
Now, basketball is, at the youth level, is one of those sports that can be thoroughly dominated by a single player. If you don't have someone who is close to their equal, then your team is just going to get absolutely wrecked. It's not like that, really. You can sort of see it sometimes in, like, youth soccer, where if there's one kid out there who's, like, way, way better than everybody else and can run circles around him, then you can get into a similar situation there. But basketball is just, it can be wholly reliant on just having one kid who can dribble and shoot.
There have been some weird, like, lopsided football scores also, like at the high school level. But, yeah, I think basketball is the more reliable.
That's why 28-3, I was like, that's a football score. Something is up.
A famous football halftime score, in
Yeah,
fact.
famous. It's a hilarious, actually, football halftime score.
All right, let's discuss the news of the week. Open up the WGAS NewsBag. The theme of executive lawlessness continues to permeate everything about what's going on in Washington and with the Trump administration and with Elon Musk and Doge. We'll get into that maybe in a minute. I think I screeched about Elon and Doge a couple of weeks ago, and then I ended up cutting all of that nonsense because I was just mad. But let's start with what's going on with Mayor Eric Adams in New York City.
Yes.
The embattled mayor of New York City. Safe to say that he will be a one-term mayor, I think, at this point.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know what the polls look like, but he can be popular in New York at the moment.
Yeah, he was indicted essentially for taking bribes in his position as. I forget when this would have happened. Was this before he became the mayor, or did it extend into his mayoral?
I thought there was some overlap.
Term?
Yeah.
It seemed like he was leaning on people to get permissions for the Turkish embassy to have like work done or something, to get like various clearances done that the city was not being forthcoming with, and benefited in the form of like miles, like upgrades to his flight situation or something. It seems to be the bottom line here. It's not quite Bob Menendez and the gold bars in the coat pockets, but it is a similar sort of politician benefits from his position at the top he does favors for people who then do favors for him, and that seems to be the crux of the issue. And this was something that had gone to court. He was indicted, right? The Justice Department was bringing action against him. This is also oddly one of those things where, like, the Biden administration would say, how can we be considered to be weaponizing the Justice Department if, in fact, we are going after the Democratic mayor of New York City at the same time that Hunter Biden is being prosecuted, at the same time, yes, as Jack Smith is pursuing what he's pursuing against Donald Trump in federal court. So leave us alone. We go after everybody, not just the Donald Trump types. Adams seems to have had a change of heart about whether or not he would allow the Trump administration access to New York City jails, specifically including like Rikers Island. Yeah. They wanted to be able to send DHS or immigration officials into the jails in New York City to find illegal aliens and then deport them. And previously, New York City identified as a sanctuary city where you would not find immigration officials coming in and enforcing. I don't know how it works. They just wouldn't cooperate essentially with immigration officials. And he had a change of heart after conversations with various Trump administration officials, including Tom Holman, something like that. The border czar. Trump's very obnoxious, sort of sheriff-type border czar. And said, in fact, yeah, you can come and do what you want to do in the New York City jails and get the bad guys out of there. And in exchange for that, Trump ordered the Southern District of New York to drop charges against Adams. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as simply saying we're going to withdraw these charges, because once the ball has been put in motion and a judge has seen evidence and heard evidence in a case, the judge isn't just going to be like, oh, okay, fine, I guess we don't care after all. The judge is going to want to know, why aren't we pursuing this any longer, prosecutors? And the lady who was in charge of this, a woman named Danielle Sassoon, I believe is how you say her name, resigned instead of dropping the charges. She was not going to go before a judge and do what would almost certainly be a disbarable act, right? Because she would either have to lie about why she was dropping these charges, or simply tell the judge, well, I'm not wanting to do this. I'm just following the orders of the boss, which is the president of the United States. It's worth noting, I think, that Trump could solve this by simply pardoning Eric Adams. If that was the plan here, he could just pardon Adams, and that would end Adams' legal entanglements with the Justice Department.
Right, but the issue there would be they want to have this case dangled over the mayor to make sure he does as agreed, right? So, like, if you can you undo a pardon? I don't know if you could do that.
Right. So, no seems the most likely response to that, and you say that as though it were the case. Of course, the Trump administration is denying that is their motivation here, but it's hard to imagine any other. Like, why not just issue the pardon, given his proclivity for wantonly issuing pardons? Right. The answer seems to be that they would just be putting the prosecution of Adams on hold and ensuring that as long as he continued to play ball in a way that pleased the Trump administration, that they would be holding those charges back. And then if he ever decided that he had a change of heart again, then, yeah, presumably the charges would be hanging over his head once again. I don't see how there's any other way of interpreting the Trump administration's actions here, except as that sort of very obvious sort of mafioso way of handling things. Not just Miss Sassoon, who, for what it's worth, is a conservative in good standing. I believe she worked for Scalia. Yeah. I think it was Scalia. It might have been Kavanaugh. A number of people, she's not the only one who resigned. Various clerks for Scalia and Kavanaugh, both Republicans and Democrats, have resigned as a result of this. I think 7 people or something like that at the Southern District of New York level stepped aside, and then another 4 in the Adams administration earlier today. also resigned because they couldn't, in good conscience or whatever, go on serving in this administration.
Why don't they just say that the president made them do it? Why is that not? Because you said they can either.
Because then the judge would. The president can't make you do it. That's like the president can say you have to do this thing, but it's not like it's not a legally binding thing, right? Like if he has any influence over the Justice Department, it is through the pardon power. He has no actual.
So why did you say that was an option? You said they either have to resign or say that they're.
Because that would essentially be throwing Trump under the bus. Like you can't go before the judge and be like, I don't know, ask Trump. He's the one who made me do it. It's not an acceptable thing to say. So when I say it, she could have done one of those two things. Oh. She couldn't actually have gone before the judge and said, well, Trump made me do it. Go ask him. Yeah,
prosecutors are given a lot of latitude as far as what they bring up, but they've already brought charges, right? So it's if they were like weighing whether or not to bring charges, and then Trump's administration came in and they said hold off, then it would be a lot cleaner. Then they can just kind of like hold off, and then have to like say something that counters to what they previously said. But in this case, they've already made the claim that the mayor of New York did these criminal acts, and for them to come back to say never mind would look bad.
Right. It has been compared across the media to the Watergate scandal in terms of the Saturday Night Massacre. That's the first thing I thought of. Yeah, because wasn't it Bork that ended up doing the bidding of the White House for Nixon? Correct, and it certainly has that flavor, and it's also worth noting that somebody at Justice, I don't have any of these names down because it's too early in this administration for me to know everybody's name, but somebody at Justice then said to Sassoon or about Sassoon that she would be investigated for her failure to do this act and choosing instead to resign. Like even as somebody who resigned, they would then start digging into her background and start doing these investigations, which is particularly rich coming from a Trump Justice Department that has insisted that the biggest problem of the last 4 years and of the Biden administration was the lawfare that was conducted against Trump, right? Choosing to go after your political opponents with the justice system is something that he was mad about for every moment since February of 2022 or so, or whenever those first indictments came down. 22 or 23, I don't know. Pop quiz, hot shot, me. Not sure what year that was. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, is it a loser's game to point out Trump and Trump administration hypocrisy? Of course it is, but whatever. It's interesting nonetheless. Do you find it odd that the timing, because you want to make sure that there isn't the appearance of a quid pro quo, right? Even though it has all the hallmarks of it here, but I remember getting it's not even clear to me that they're denying that there's a quid pro quo.
Well, they would have to. I mean, if it came to you can't say, yes, we are prosecuting the mayor of New York until we figure out if he wants to play ball with us and lets us do whatever we want regarding immigration in his city. But there was the notification I received of the resignations from the lawyers, from the prosecutor's office. And then a day or two later, a notification comes up saying that the mayor of New York is letting the immigration officials go to these holding cells and doing whatever it is that they want. Basically, it's like a change of course. All of a sudden, right? And these two stories are well, wait a minute. Did that first notification have anything to do with this second notification? Because as far as I can tell, there isn't new information that has come to light that makes it look like the mayor of New York is innocent all of a sudden.
Well, no,
right?
of course not.
Right? So, what has changed since these lawyers who brought the charges on, what has changed? Nothing has changed as far as the case goes.
No, it's very obviously what it appears to be, which is the trading of immigration enforcement abilities inside New York City for this prosecution being dropped against Adams. And it would be utterly disingenuous to imagine that it is any other thing. And it's really, really bad. Because it is one more example of although, by the way, on this week, the ABC News Sunday program, that didn't stop Rance Priebus from insisting that, well, there could be things that the DOJ knows that we don't know, that they're not telling us. They don't have to tell us the things that they know about this case. It's not up to them to tell us all of the...
The DOJ has a right to determine whether or not this prosecution goes forward. We can all agree on that. The one thing we can also agree on is we don't really know what the DOJ knows. Maybe they're dismissing it without prejudice because they're not comfortable with the case as it stands, but there might be some things that are there that they want to look into as well. So and the president is very sensitive about this topic of public officials being prosecuted. He went through it. So I happen to know for the last year, the president was very uncomfortable with this case. So I'm not surprised that they want to move forward and get rid of it.
But now Eric has a cloud over his head. He knows that. Mayor Adams he's up for re-election. He understood going into 2025 that he wanted to cut a deal. He went down to Mar-a-Lago, and somehow or another, when you read all of the legal documents, you say, oh, my God, something here doesn't fit the script. And you know what that something is? It's that line that says by November 2025, if Eric is unable or incapable of carrying out what Trump wants him to do,
they can be prosecuted again.
Thank you.
Okay.
What is that?
It's
a quid pro quo? What is that?
It's like, fuck you, Rance. You do not have to defend everything that this administration does just because the media hates Donald Trump. Right? Like, you need to be able to hold in your head two things, which is that the media is going to freak out about everything that the Trump administration does, whether it's good or bad, and also that the Trump administration can sometimes do demonstrably very, very bad things. Right? And if you're going to be an honest person in the world, you need to be able to contend with both of those ideas at the same time. And Rance Priebus does not appear to be equipped to do such a thing. How did I get myself sidetracked to Rance? What was I saying?
I don't know.
It couldn't be anything but the quid pro quo in an obvious sort of way. And it speaks directly to Trump's utter disrespect for, and it's not even disrespect. He does not believe in the rule of law. He does not, like straight up, there's no reason to think that Donald Trump thinks that the law matters at all. It has... he believes in the total illegitimacy of the Justice Department at this point. Like it is just a weapon for him to use as he sees fit, or not use as he sees fit, to his own political ends. And to imagine that he has any respect for the rule of law at this point is an absurdity. He pardoned, in addition to the January 6th pardons, the one that really stands out to me is the Rod Blagojevich pardon as well. A guy who literally sold a U.S. or attempted to sell a United States Senate seat, but who then later got chummy with Donald Trump through the Celebrity Apprentice. And then Trump was like, no, it's a pardon. It's fine. He's erasing it from the history books as though it never fucking happened.
Was he commuted the first go-around? Wasn't he let go of prison during the first Trump term, or did his time already run out? I forget. I could have swore he was... Something happened to him with Trump the first go, and it seems to be like kind of coming back to clean up.
From the AP, Trump pardons ex-Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich 5 years after commuting his sentence. So he commuted the sentence before, and then went ahead and gave him the full pardon this time around. And it's just an example of him having absolutely no respect for the rule of law. There's no question as to Rod Blagojevich's guilt in this matter. He did the thing. He tried to sell the Senate seat. Trump simply believes that because it's his buddy, and because essentially I think it also comes down to it's what he's doing there feels like something that is so patently Trumpian in the way that everything is a transaction for Trump. You can look at the thing that was the headline on Drudge today is the contract that the Trump administration apparently drafted and sent over to Ukraine, which leaked to the media, saying what Ukraine is going to owe the United States for support that has thus far been given and any future support. And it's it's insane. It's essentially making Ukraine a vassal state of the United States, where we get in excess of like half of their stuff in perpetuity forever, for what Trump claims.
All they have is fucking potatoes, though.
The claim is that they have all of these rare earth metals.
They don't have. They have some.
Yeah. What's funny is that the market for rare earth metals has tanked in recent years. So like 3 years ago, this would have been an interesting sort of quote unquote deal. But at this point, like the lithium reserves are relatively worthless compared to what they might have been worth just a few short years ago.
But couldn't that go the other way? Is this like just it's still rare material, right? Like
Apparently they're not as rare as the name would imply.
Okay. Maybe I need to change the name.
Yeah. Not so rare lithium reserves in Ukraine.
Like relatively rare.
Yeah.
It gets into that same sort of idea that the world is a place of competing individuals rather than competing institutions or long-standing institutions. It doesn't matter that Ukraine is a sovereign nation. The United States gave it money, and in return, we should be receiving money. Like that's the mindset of Donald Trump. Never mind that like he insists that we've spent $300 billion on Ukraine when the number is actually $175 billion in congressional authorization, and 40% of that is weapons bought from United States weapons manufacturers, right? So it, like nearly half of it is just money that goes directly back into the United States economy, and then some other big chunk of it is lend-lease money. It's money that Ukraine is expected to pay back over the course of an extended period of time. It's not just a gift.
Right.
Never mind the fact that it is to the United States' benefit that Russia doesn't get territorially insane and start traipsing across Europe, snatching up territory that it lost 30, 40 years ago. It's a Trump sort of theory of governance. Now, granted, it is silly to imagine that Donald Trump has a theory of governance or a theory of anything else, right? And he doesn't. But in the way that he practices governance, it sort of reveals an understanding about the way he thinks that the world should work.
Right.
And that theory, to the extent that it can be called a theory, is just it's autocracy. It is the rule of a single individual. It is the all of the power is invested in the executive, in the person who's at the head of the government, and the institutions behind them be damned. It doesn't matter that these are countries and sovereign nations at question. All it comes down to is the ability of this one dominant personality to enforce his will on the others.
You know, I wonder if this offer made to Ukraine, because by all accounts, Trump and the Republican Party, they don't seem to have much of an appetite to support Ukraine. So, like, is this offer, like, we recognize how weak of a position Ukraine is and let's take advantage? Or is this, we know that they can't possibly accept this terrible deal, but it gives the impression that we gave them a deal, they said no to it, and now we're going to go to Russia and make some other deal selling off Ukraine's land? Like, is this like a sincere offer, or is this like, we know you can't accept this, but we're going to give the impression that we offered assistance and you turned it down, just so we can say we did that?
Yeah, I have no idea what the underlying thought here is. The defense of it is that
they don't seem to have any underlying thought to anything they do. It's just do, and there's no consideration for not just like 3 or 4 or 5 steps down the road, but like the literal next thing.
For what it's worth, it's not unlike what he has always said about like Iraq, where he would say, we went into Iraq, we spent all this money on Iraq, and we didn't even take their oil. What fucking idiots are we? We didn't even take the oil. We should have taken the oil. And so it's like, we did all of this for Ukraine, and we didn't even take the rare earth minerals that were in the ground there. What idiots are we that we're not getting anything out of this? It's this insistence that we're doing this out of the goodness of our heart, like a sucker, right? That we're doing this as though there's no benefit to us, which is not something that I cannot comprehend a belief that everything that's happened since the end of World War II is bad for the United States, that somehow the American century that we've just experienced, that may well be coming to an end, was somehow us being suckers on the world stage because we didn't become this massive military empire, this imperialist empire. Instead, we were this economic engine, right? We were, to the extent that we were imperialist, it was largely culturally, right? We've spread Americanism and capitalism throughout the world, but not in terms of territory, right? And for whatever reason, Trump seems to believe that the post-World War II global order was disastrous for the United States in ways that simply don't comport with reality. I know this is something that I said a couple of weeks ago about, like, what are we complaining about?
Yeah.
Like, everything's fucking great. Like, and the American century was actually really good. And the post-World War II order, in terms of how it sort of solved Europe, where generation after generation was just war after war after war. And then since the end of World War II, when we allowed Germany to sort of rebuild itself, and we had this Cold War against communism, things were actually pretty fucking great, relatively speaking. And the stability that was experienced globally. Now, you know, granted all of the other stuff, right, the Korean War and the Vietnam War and all of that, but relatively speaking, the Pax Americana held for much of the 20th century. And what is it about that is so bad? And I from a Chomskyite perspective, I understand that critique, right? I disagree with the Chomskyite critique of American power of the 20th century. I think it's ridiculous for the most part. But I don't understand it from a Trumpian perspective whatsoever, certainly.
Yeah, that is interesting because, you know, like Putin has often said that, you know, the dissolution of the USSR was a disaster for Russia and blah, blah, blah. But from his vantage point, it makes sense, right? But from America's point of view, like, I don't understand how you can have a similar view where, like, things have gotten worse for America. I guess, is it the globalization? Just the jobs have been lost in some sectors, and he's kind of feeding off of that. Like, I can't figure out where this.
At the same time that we have continued to be the richest nation in the world by a lot. At the same time that our middle class has, yes, as inequality grows, as the income inequality grows in this country, it gets uglier. And I don't mean to downplay all of those concerns, but, like, life has largely been pretty good here for a very long time, and I don't know what we're complaining about.
Peace and stability, I guess, are eventually taken for granted, right? It's like as a given, like, no, I want something different, even though it's going to destabilize what you currently have. It's like, no, let's try something else, and then the whole thing falls apart.
Right. I wanted to talk about J.D. Vance giving a speech in Germany at a security conference of some sort, which made big headlines, and I read the entirety of his speech. There's a fucking 15-second clip that went around where he basically says,
the threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
All right, so that's the 20 seconds or so that got played on news shows over and over again as the weekend went on. And I went and I read the entire, I didn't watch the entire thing, but I read the transcript of his speech. And it is an interesting, it's a more interesting speech than that clip and the coverage around that clip would have you believe, that I think is a defensible and interesting position and concern, and expressed concern about free speech in Europe, and specifically, especially in Germany, and a concern that that which Europe and America are spending all of this wealth and treasure to defend, ostensibly, with our security commitments, what is the thing that we are defending if we don't maintain these commitments to Western ideals of liberalism and free speech that were ostensibly the reason that we got together in the first place, right? Like if we're going to watch as the things that we are supposed to, the values that we care about are no longer valued in the same way, what is it that we are actually defending here? What are we spending all of this money defending if it's not the same values that we started with? Which is an interesting thought and something worth considering, especially in the context of a 60 Minutes piece that we're going to talk about here in just a minute about free speech in Germany or the lack thereof. But to play the clip, the relevant moment again here.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America.
The threat that I worry the most about is not Russia.
China,
or China.
Europe.
In a world in which Russia didn't do what it did 3 years ago is a perfectly defensible thing to say. That is not the world in which we live. Russia decided to invade Ukraine in an attempt to overthrow its government and take it over as a vassal state in a claim of denazification that is utter nonsense, right? Like the claim by Putin and his government is that they are denazifying Ukraine, which is an absurdity for a country led by, as Tucker Carlson would have you remember, a rat-faced Jew in Zelensky. Or sweaty and rat-faced, I believe, is how he described the Jewish president of Ukraine, which is great job by you, Tucker. But in a world in which Russia actually invaded their neighbor and attempted to overthrow the government there and take it over, it is an absurdity to say that I don't worry so much about the threat from Russia. What else? Like I know, it is important to talk about first principles. It's important to care about our values and to care about free speech. But not when Russia's army is literally trying to bomb the shit out of Kyiv.
I did not listen or read the transcript for the speech. What is this threat from within? Is he talking about domestic terrorists or like
Wokeism.
lone wolf terrorists? What's that?
Wokeism.
No, not wokeism. In a sense, wokeism, I suppose, but essentially it's a speech that complains a great deal about immigration and a great deal about censorship and the inability or the unwillingness of much of Europe, in J.D. Vance's estimation, to listen to its people.
So what's interesting about that is, okay, you can have opinions about it as just any person or the vice president of some other country, but it's weird. These countries have a system in place to decide for themselves immigration levels and censorship and all that stuff. These security conferences are like, as far as identifying threats and dealing with them and coming up with some sort of plan to work around them. And the one threat that is looming large in Europe is the threat from Russia. And he's minimizing that, saying it's not a big deal. And also, they're going to come to a reasonable, like, what did he say, reasonable settlement or reasonable compromise? I mean, one country was invaded, right? This is not like is it India and Pakistan with the Kashmir, like this disputed region? Like, okay, you guys can hash out who this belongs to. That's one thing. It's like a controversial area. But this one was, you had the border. Everybody recognized Ukraine as being that, and then that was invaded. And now you're saying that's not a threat. Don't worry about what's happening over there. I'm concerned about this like issue that should be left up to the people of each country, right? Like, what's it to you? What Germany is doing about immigration, I mean, you should care about your own immigration policies in America, but like, it's such a weird, like, hey, don't worry about this threat that's coming from the East. Like, worry about this random thing that I picked up, which could be an issue, but like, it just seems kind of a weird thing to bring up in this venue at this conference.
Never mind also that a lot of what he's complaining about essentially comes down to Syrian migration, right? The millions of people who were displaced as a result of the Syrian civil war, which was not just a Syrian civil war, but was in fact a sort of proxy war between the United States and Russia as well, where Russia is trying to exert a great deal of influence outside of their country in Syria, which then causes all of these problems, which includes the forced displacement of millions of Syrians who then go flooding into Germany and go flooding into the Nordic countries, which causes all of these reactionary situations to arise, where far-right politicians find themselves with a bone to pick with the global order and with Merkel in particular. It's not something that happened in isolation, right? The thing that he's complaining about, this migration crisis in Europe over the last decade, is a result in no small part of the adventurism of the Russians and the United States of going outside of their individual sort of zones of influence and trying to exert power. It's sort of a bigger and more interesting conversation than he's giving it credit for, and instead simply saying in isolation, you shouldn't let all the darkies into your country because that was a mistake and it upset the people who you're now calling antisocial, which is essentially, Lori wasn't wrong to say that this is a complaint about wokeism because a lot of what he's saying is you should listen to the people who are most angry right now. And the people who are most angry right now are the ones who are upset about migration and the changes that are happening in their country. But again, like that comes down to is a result of, in no small part, actions by foreign governments that caused this to happen.
It's interesting that this conservative movement has gone global now. So now somebody in America, conservative in America, is talking up the cause of the conservatives in Germany, the conservatives in Italy, the UK.
Mega.
Typically you would think
They're calling it
just
mega.
I know, but it's very weird to me. You would think, okay, you have your domestic issues, you resolve them through the elections, and then now you have a government, and then that government goes to other countries and talks to those governments, but they deal at the top level, just like intergovernmental issues, regional issues, that sort of thing. But wading into domestic issues as the vice, to me, has that happened like this before? It just seems kind of odd that you'd be weighing in to this extent about something that is aren't the elections happening soon in Germany anyways? This is going to be resolved at some point, right? So you would think you would just deal with at the level that you should deal with, which is regional issues or whatever is happening in Europe. It's very odd.
Yeah. I do think it's an interesting conversation to have about Europe's commitment to things like the liberal world order and free speech and all of that in any other context besides the one in which Ukraine is currently fighting for its survival as a sovereign nation, right? To me, it's just so completely disingenuous to say I'm not too worried about the threat from Russia as Russia is trying to branch out and take over Ukraine. And then, do we think that they're going to stop there? If they had found success, does anybody really think that was going to be the end of the expansionism from Moscow? No, of course not. At the same time that China is getting increasingly interested in taking back in expanding into Taiwan, right, and taking over Taiwan. Right. We're not worried about those things. Actually, instead, we're more concerned about whether or not the Nazis in Germany are allowed to say the bad thing. Which again, you watch this 60 Minutes bit about the people in Germany not being allowed to post mean things online. It's okay, well, I sort of see where Vance is coming from, maybe. But before we get into that, I wanted to play this clip from Face the Nation with Maggie Brennan and Marco Rubio. I missed this question the first time. I noticed that I had a problem this weekend where everyone who was showing up on the news shows was really pissing me off.
Bob was yelling. It was Sunday morning, and Bob was yelling.
And
if it's Sunday, it's Bob yelling.
And it was causing me to occasionally miss pieces of the various backs and forths.
It's a problem of when you yell, is that you can't. What is it if you have 2 ears and one mouth?
Yeah.
But if your mouth, just shut the fuck up.
I will play a couple of minutes. This will be a slightly extended clip between Marco and Maggie Brennan of Face the Nation.
I want to ask you about what happened in Munich, Germany at the security conference. Vice President Vance gave a speech, and he told U.S. allies that the threat he worries about the most is not Russia. It is not China. He called it the threat from within, and he lectured about what he described as censorship, mainly focusing, though, on including more views from the right. He also met with the leader of a far-right party known as the AfD, which, as you know, is under investigation and monitoring by German intelligence because of extremism. What did all of this accomplish other than irritating our allies?
Why would our allies or anybody be irritated by free speech and by someone giving their opinion? We are, after all, democracies. The Munich Security Conference is largely a conference of democracies in which one of the things that we cherish and value is the ability to speak freely and provide your opinions. And so I think if anyone's angry about his word, they don't have to agree with him, but to be angry about it, I think actually makes his point. I thought it was actually a pretty historic speech, whether you agree with him or not. I think the valid points he's making to Europe is we are concerned that the true values that we share, the values that bind us together with Europe, are things like free speech and democracy and our shared history in winning 2 world wars and defeating Soviet communism and the like. These are the values that we shared in common. And in that Cold War, we fought against things like censorship and oppression and so forth. And when you see backsliding and you raise that, that's a very valid concern. We can't tell them how to run their countries. He simply expressed in a speech his view of it, which a lot of people, frankly, share. And I thought he said a lot of things in that speech that needed to be said. And honestly, I don't know why anybody would be upset about it. People are allowed, you don't have to agree with someone's speech. I happen to agree with a lot of what he said, but you don't have to agree with someone's speech to at least appreciate the fact they have a right to say it, and that you should listen to it and see whether those criticisms are valid. I assure you, the United States has come under withering criticism on many occasions from many leaders in Europe, and we don't go around throwing temper tantrums about it.
All right, I'm going to pause there before the next part because this is where I was yelling at the screen, and so I missed this when Maggie asked it the first time. The thing that I was mad about was like Marco Rubio, of all people, knows about the Russian threat, right? And so, yes, he can dissemble all he wants about how he agrees with the free speech critiques that the dude was making. You're the Secretary of State. You know the reality of the situation there. You are not an idiot when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine stuff. At least you haven't been for much of the last 3 years. Why not just acknowledge? Why not just gesture in the general direction of reality and say, look, I think the free speech points that he was making is great and important and a worthy conversation. Also, Russia invaded a sovereign nation in Ukraine,
because
and that's not remotely acceptable.
Says that.
And so my concern at the moment would not be so much for the enemy within, but instead about the actual threat that Russia is posing right now to Ukraine and beyond that to the rest of Europe.
I suspect the mission statement is do not undermine the administration to which you belong, right? So, like, even though the point you raise is valid, he's never going to say that. He's just going to do this dance for whatever reason. Because, like, one of the values should be respecting other people's borders, right? That went out the window. Like, no one cares about that all of a sudden. So, like, why should you care about these other downstream issues? If you don't care about the border of another country, then everything else is fair game also, you would think.
Right. All right. And then Maggie asks one of the dumbest questions or statements in the history of this news program.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship
I have to disagree with
was
you.
specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you.
Free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. She's suggesting that free speech gave us Hitler, which gave us the Holocaust, is the math that Maggie Brennan is doing in that question, which is like I sincerely cannot remember a more patently insane thing from a relatively smart person.
It is a very strained argument to make. I guess she's trying to make the case that, like, populism comes through the front door, right? I mean, like the Nazis won an election, and so everything that happens from that is because of a people choosing process.
To say nothing, and I think it's worth playing Marco's response here, which is actually really good. And I was, because I had yelled through her question, I was sort of mystified by what he was saying here. But it's a pretty good response to what is a fucking patently absurd thing that she just said.
free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history. I also think it's wrong. Again, I go back to the point of his speech. Okay, the point of his speech was basically that there is an erosion.
Anyway, that's he then reiterates everything from before. But like, that was off the cuff for Marco to be able to say, like, what are you talking about? There was no free speech in Germany. Like, the Holocaust was not a result of all of the free speech that the Germans had. And if it, like, even if it was, what are you saying here? That, are you saying that free speech is just something that we shouldn't have because it results in the death of 6 million Jews in World War II? Like, what is the point that you're getting at here, Maggie?
Yeah, the argument is going to take you to a dead end, so it's best not to get there. But like, I do wonder though, like, what is the environment that's fertile to the worst of humans, right? Like, what creates the environment to where
you're living in
somebody like a Hitler or like the Rwandan people or anywhere else, like where does that come from? Like, what is the environment?
Just really specific. Like they had a really bad thing happened when they let people say hateful things to crowds. Like, maybe the worst thing that's ever happened in the world happened when Germany specifically had that happen. So they're just very sensitive to hate speech.
Well, hate speech isn't a thing, so we can...
But, like, that's what it is. You're allowed to say lots of things.
But, okay, so...
You're just not allowed to say we should kill a whole group of people in Germany. It's understandable.
Right. Like,
if that was the thing that they were making sure wasn't happening, then that's fine. If you're going to get on the internet and call a politician a penis, you should not expect that the fucking police are going to bang down your door at 6 o'clock in the morning and confiscate your phone and your computer, right? Like, that's what they're doing there.
That's what he's arguing about. Like, don't harass those people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll play the clip. We'll get to the 60 Minutes and the German thing in a minute here. It's just, I don't think that it is whatever. I'm trying to make 2 points at the same time here, which is, one, there are valid concerns about speech culture in Europe and speech culture in the United States, apparently, where one of the anchors of one of our Sunday news programs is saying, well, with free speech, you get the fucking Holocaust. So what good is free speech? Like, that's a nightmare that this is somebody who's like in her 40s who went to our nation's top colleges and is at the top of her profession and is saying, well, if we allow too much free speech, we end up with 6 million dead Jews. So how good is free speech? Aside from that, at the same time that J.D. Vance is saying that we need to have this conversation about the enemy from within and the people who are not listening to their own people and are instead concerned about shutting down speech that they don't agree with, what this administration is doing in this country at the same time is the following.
Retaliatory in nature is the argument, because the reason that the AP was barred, which they said was because they're not using the phrase Gulf of America, they're using Gulf of Mexico in line with their standards. And so the question here is this setting a precedent that this White House will retaliate against reporters who don't use the language that you guys believe reporters should use? And how does that align with the First Amendment commitment that you were just talking about?
I was very upfront in my briefing on day one that if we feel that there are lies being pushed by outlets in this room, we are going to hold those lies accountable. And it is a fact that the body of water off the coast of Louisiana is called the Gulf of America. And I'm not sure why news outlets don't want to call it that, but that is what it is. The Secretary of Interior has made that the official designation in the geographical identification name server. And Apple has recognized that. Google has recognized that. Pretty much every other outlet in this room has recognized that body of water as the Gulf of America. And it's very important to this administration that we get that right, not just for people here at home, but also for the rest of the world.
So the White House has barred the Associated Press from a number of events in the aftermath of the Associated Press failing to change their style guide to reflect that the administration wants to call the Gulf of Mexico now the Gulf of America. And so their response to the AP not doing that, which, by the way, the AP says the United States can call it whatever it wants to call it. We're an international wire service, and much of the globe recognizes it as the Gulf of Mexico. There's only this one country here in America that calls it the Gulf of America now, and only in the last month. So we're not going to change the style guide to reflect that they've we will note in the same way that everybody says Twitter or X or Twitter or whatever the fuck it is that we're calling it now. We'll note that the Trump administration has said that we're going to call it the Gulf of America. But in terms of how we're going to refer to it, for simple clarity's sake, it's still going to be the Gulf of Mexico when we're talking about that body of water that is off the coast of Texas and Louisiana and Mexico. So to then turn around and say, we're not going to let the Associated Press do their job in the way that they are supposed to be permitted to under the First Amendment and the freedom of the press. Where's the free speech here, Trump administration? Where's the? And again, it's a loser's game to point out these sorts of hypocrisies, I suppose. But it again, it feels worth doing nevertheless.
It is a very weird thing to argue with the Associated Press. Like, what's it to you how they're reporting something? Like, to the point to where you're barring them from attending these press briefings? It just seems to be like, what's the end game? Like, until they change their style guide, you're going to bring them back? Or, like, I mean, how long can this go on for?
It's been called the Gulf of Mexico for like fucking 400 or 500 years at this point.
And again, I will predict that this is going to be a short-term thing, right? By the end of this decade, it's going to go back to the Gulf of Mexico, right? So to me, it's like, what? This is such a pointless kind of news story. Like, why do you care what the AP calls it?
So we were talking about this weekend because it keeps coming up. It's like this fucking Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico thing. And it's like someone, I'm trying to think how to phrase it. I'll just go with what I said to Lori. I wish that she was here right now. I'm going to wait for her to come back to have the rest of this part of the conversation.
Where did she go?
I think she's feeding her sourdough starter.
Oh.
I had to go feed the sourdough starter.
Yeah, I know.
Bob was telling me, yeah.
All right, we were discussing the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico thing, and I had mentioned how...
I don't care.
Yeah, Lori doesn't care. Obviously,
that is the right
Sisyphus. It's a Sisyphus thing. I'm going to call it what the fuck I want to call it, and someone else can call it something else. Whatever.
That is the right attitude, I think. Like, why does it really matter?
Obviously, it's the right attitude.
Yeah.
Okay, that is the right attitude. But then the press secretary, Leavitt, goes up there and says, we're not letting the AP do the AP thing because they won't call it the Gulf of Mexico. They won't call it the Gulf of America.
She has the wrong attitude.
Yeah, that is the wrong attitude, yes.
And my metaphor for this, my analogy here is it's someone in the form of the Trump administration or Trump himself. It's someone mooning you and then getting performatively angry at you for being like, hey, man, why the fuck are you mooning me? Right? It's like Trump is mooning us.
It's very funny.
And daring us to notice that he's mooning us, right? And then making fun of us for noticing that he's mooning us, right? So it's a provocation in a provocation that never acknowledges that it's a provocation, right?
Right.
And it's like, and it's so fucking childish and stupid. But like and it's just pure red meat for the idiots who think that like they're just fighting the good fight against the bad guys in the form of the media. But like, why are we allowing someone to like? And what are you supposed to do? One of the most uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever told this to anyone. In fact, because it made me so deeply uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever revealed the following. Okay. Which is that at late night Domino's one night, this is in the managing days, it's late, it's after midnight certainly, but it's not yet bar rush time. I was the only one in the store, maybe another driver or two were out on the road, but I was alone in the store, and a guy comes in, a college-aged guy comes in, and he's acting shifty and being sort of awkward and weird, and he's dressed comfortably as the folks on the plane usually are, right? And as we were talking about, he's in sweats, like a sweat shorts and a hoodie of some sort. And I look up after I ask him how he's doing, and I sort of look up from the drawer or from the computer, and his fucking dick is out, right? So he had done he's trying to get a rise out of me in some fashion, right? He's one of these people who goes around showing their genitals to other people, and my reaction was to not acknowledge anything, right?
Okay.
Because he didn't actually want to place an order. He wasn't trying to stick around. Like, he came, I forget even what the question was, because I immediately, like, I became flush and awkward and uncomfortable in the way that he no doubt wanted me to feel, right? Like, this is a person who's doing a sort of a minor sexual assault in some way in his own head.
What was he wearing? He was these were jeans or like just
like sweatpants, some sort of comfy, easily
something with easy you can get your dick out easy.
Right.
And was he dick out coming in, or did he take it out?
No, he took it
while
out
he was in there?
at some point, so that because when I first saw him, his dick was not out, and I looked away, and then when I looked back, it was here was his situation, and after that, like he just left. Like, his goal was to flash me his dick and then to leave. Like, it wasn't an ongoing issue. But I was made profoundly uncomfortable. Like, it's not the sort of thing that I've experienced before. Not being a woman, which I assume that's just a common experience of the fairer sex.
Yeah, pretty much any time we're left alone, just dicks out.
Just dicks flying everywhere. How did I get there?
Mooning. You're talking about mooning.
So yeah, it's sort of like someone showing you their dick or showing you their ass, and then in the aftermath of that, claiming that you're the one who's being unreasonable here, right? Like, because that's all this. Like, there's no reason. I cannot find any motivation or reason for why we cannot call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of Mexico. Right? Apparently, some senator or state congressman from Louisiana back in like 2011 or something introduced it as a joke in the state legislature of Louisiana, saying that anywhere that the water touches the United States, we should call that portion of the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. It did not make it out of committee in the state legislature of Louisiana because it was a joke.
Also, the state legislature of Louisiana is like famously fucked up. So that's saying
I can
something.
believe that. And also, there are so many dumb ideas that get thrown around. They're introduced knowing that it's not going to go anywhere. I think the latest one is to make a President Trump Day instead of just a President's Day. But it's like some like yokel congressman will bring that up, and it's not going to go anywhere. So it's like these things are not supposed to go anywhere. Typically.
Do you remember when you guys started this podcast again and I said that the entire Republican platform was just being an asshole, and you got kind of mad at me and you were like, no, they are trying to do things.
Yeah, it's not the entire platform, but like this is an example of them simply being an asshole, obviously.
But like everything they've been doing for the past few weeks to call it short-sighted is underselling how short-sighted they're being.
Yeah, they fired like hundreds of important critical nuclear employees at the Department of Energy, and then had to
just to be assholes.
Well, they didn't they blocked some 300 people from showing up to work on Friday, and then had to spend half the weekend sending out emails saying, "No, you weren't actually fired. That was a mistake. Please come back to work."
I don't see how. I'm not. It seems like all they're trying to do right now is be assholes. And whatever consequence there is, they're like, oh, well, we'll just deal with that later. It'll be worth it because we're being assholes. Not it'll be worth it in the long term. Like, this is going to hurt for a while, but we have a vision for the future and it's going to be really good for everybody. It seems like the only thing they want to do is be an asshole right now.
Yeah.
Now. And then anything after they think they won't have to deal with.
It's incredibly frustrating to me because, and I didn't read the whole piece. I just read a small portion of Andrew Sullivan's something on his Substack. But he expressed a sentiment that is something that is close to what I'm thinking about the whole Doge thing, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, and this attempt to find waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government and root it out. The way that Elon and the administration are going about this process is clownish and destined to end in disaster, because the reaction to it the counter reaction to the absurd thing that they're doing will be everything that they did was bad because of the way that they did it. And even when they uncover something that is a good example of government waste, fraud, or abuse, it can't be trusted, right? Because Elon is going on Twitter and posting absurd things that turn out to be total lies. Like there was this thing about $50 million in condoms for Gaza, which he tweeted out as a fact, right? He said USAID does things like, for example, $50 million for condoms in Gaza. And it turns out it was $70 million, and I'll get the fact check wrong here, but which is not good, obviously. But it turns out it was a slightly larger amount of money for a much bigger program fighting AIDS in a whole other country. Right. Okay. So it was money to stop the spread of AIDS somewhere that wasn't Gaza, and it was much larger than just sending them condoms. Right. But he framed it as it was $50 million for condoms in Gaza, which was a lie. And so the thing that they're doing here is largely telling lies about all of the waste, fraud, and abuse that they are alleging to be finding, and therefore causing this reaction among normal people that says, oh, they're doing bad things, right? And it seems like they're very much doing bad things. The thing that's frustrating about it is that, like, if instead Donald Trump had said, let's take the next 6 months, Elon, and go through with a fine-tooth comb and find all of the examples of waste, fraud, and abuse that are going on in the United States, and then issue a report, right? And then come up with this big Doge report. And we'll have this big thing at Capitol Hill, and we'll go before Congress, and we'll say, look, here are 150 examples of different things that you guys have authorized in an ongoing way that are ridiculous, right? And we're going to find the most absurd examples of them, and we're going to save money this way. And that could have been a very effective moment.
They don't want to actually stop any waste, fraud, or abuse. They just want to be assholes.
Right, and what's particularly galling about it is that the part of the government that they're going after is such a it's all such small bore nonsense. It's all such tiny little, relative to the fact that this is somebody who came to power in Donald Trump, saying that he wasn't going to touch entitlements, right? That he's going to make sure that your Social Security is fine. He's going to make sure that your Medicare and your Medicaid are fine. He's not going to touch those things. He's not going to touch, as it turns out, Obamacare, right? Because after all of the first time through, they didn't even fucking fix that, and he doesn't even talk about that anymore. So he's not going to touch that entitlement either, or however you want to frame that. The U.S. healthcare system, he's not going to fuck with that. Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. He said he's going to rebuild the United States military such that it is stronger than it's ever been before. So any defense cuts in a serious way are obviously off the table. Now we're talking about like fucking 80%.
Yeah, I mean, we're basically, more than 3/4 of the way there, right?
Right.
Just by those things that you mentioned.
Just those things alone, you're talking about 75 or 80% of government spending. So now we're just talking about working at the margins here and trying to go in and take $50 billion off the table for USAID, which, by the way, does some very absurd things and also does really important work around the world. I highly recommend listening to the latest episode as of now of a podcast called Reflector, which is they put out episodes whenever they can. Basically, they don't have a very set schedule, but it tackles the question of USAID from the perspective of people who saw both the good and the bad that it does around the world, and it takes a fairly nuanced understanding of what's going on here, and it it's only triply or quadruply frustrating because like there are massive reforms that could have been instituted that could have made the good parts of USAID continue and the bad parts go away, and instead we just get Elon going in and throwing the baby out with the bathwater and the tub as well.
Well, he's got all
seemingly.
those babies. He can afford it.
Yeah. There was Mark Wayne Mullen, to divert myself here for just a moment, was on one of the Sunday shows.
The Oklahoma senator?
Actually, no, this wasn't. Yeah, that guy. But I think it was actually Rance Priebus again. Rance Priebus had a canned line that he wanted to get out on This Week on ABC. And he said that the real problem here that Democrats have to reckon with is that they lost the battle of normal to the Republicans.
The Democrats have found themselves on the wrong side of normal. And in spite of all the challenges that Donald Trump had, court cases, all the ups, the American people have said, that's more, I identify more with Donald Trump than I do with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They're on the wrong side of all these cultural issues, and until they get that straight.
People looked at all of the crazy shit the Democrats have been saying since the racial reckoning, maybe since 2020, or maybe go back to 2014, and all of the gender stuff and all of the woke stuff and the stuff coming out of the academy, out of our colleges, and that doesn't seem normal to the average American. And I think that that's right, essentially, right? That somehow the Republicans seem more normal in that very limited sense. But then you take a step back and you think, can I actually defend the statement that Republicans won the battle for normal when it turns out that Elon Musk has just had his 13th child by like the fourth or fifth different woman, none of whom he's like only one of whom he's in an actual relationship with, which is the first ex-wife, and that's the normal. Like Elon Musk is normal. This fucking psychotic Adderall-addled billionaire who goes on Twitter at all hours and makes shit up. And the other normal is Donald Trump, who's got kids by fucking 4 different women or something, right? Who paid off a fucking porn star. Like, what are you talking about? We won the battle of normal. Like, in some respect, yes, he's right. But, like, how can you say that the paragon of normalcy is Elon Musk and Donald Trump at this point? It's very silly.
I assume it's like a relative thing, relatively normal compared to. Yeah.
Compared to what?
I mean, that's the argument he's making. Like, oh, we're not pushing for, these bathroom things and like gender things.
I think that what he is sort of getting at is a revolt, the revulsion that was that the average American had to a lot of the woker stuff that people complain about with the Democrats was like, well, we'll just take we'll take this guy as our fucking champion because you've eviscerated any standards that we are of normalcy that we should care about. So like, who fucking cares? We'll just have Donald Trump and Elon Musk do whatever the fuck they want to do because at least they're pointing out how fucking crazy you are. Again, Reflect Your Podcast is a good rundown on the USAID problem. Any word from inside the IRS, Abe? As our man on the inside, there was a story this weekend that Elon and Doge were about to get access to the IRS in the same way that they had recently had access to the AID. I guess you didn't go to work today, and so you don't know. Is there any chatter or concern about like them coming in and blowing up the IRS in the same way that they've just blown up a number of other federal agencies?
It is a federal holiday today, but I do, have access to my computer. No, there's no chatter. There's never been any chatter. Like in our world, it's like nothing has happened because we don't have any information that's different than what's being reported in the news, right? So it's not like we're getting some, hey, your eyes only information. It's literally all the information that I know is the information available to the general public because this is happening so haphazardly and fast. And going back to the point that you're making, like if you were trying to root out like fraud, waste, and abuse, you would take a methodical approach. And to Lori's point, like if that's what their goal was, that's what they would be doing. But based on their behavior, it suggests that what Lori is saying is more likely true, right? Because like, if you just want to be a dick about it, this is what you would be doing, right? Like, if you actually wanted to root out these things, there would be a process, either like a a blue ribbon commission or like something even faster, like a 4-month report or 100 days. Give me some report and we'll cut, 20 things or whatever. Like if that was, and then be mindful of the statutes and the laws and see how we go about it. Maybe we got to go through Congress, or we're going to put it in our report for the next budget. If you're actually trying to do something like long-standing, then you would go about it that way. But if you're just pressing buttons to see what it does and like, oh shit, I pressed the wrong button, can you come back to work because we didn't mean you, like, then you're just doing it for other reasons. Like, at least that's how it appears from on my end. It's just like you're just pressing buttons to see what happens.
I remain, and the reason that I cut our Elon Musk talk out of the show a couple weeks ago was because it was basically just me saying every time I see Elon Musk on television, I scream at the television, why is he being permitted to do this thing? Like, what are we doing? He can't just go shut down congressionally approved federal agencies. There's a law that says this thing exists. We've appropriated money for the paying of all of these jobs. You can't just go fire you federal employees have one of the strongest unions in the country, right? You're supposed to be secure in your employment. The guy can't just come in and say, with all of his 22-year-old engineer bros, your job doesn't actually matter, so you're not permitted back to work. Like, none of this is acceptable in anything like the rule. Like, if we have an understanding that there's a rule of law and there's a process for these things and how they will unfold, in what world is this okay? And anytime I see him fucking standing there talking about the Doge stuff, it's like, you have none of the authority to be doing any of this. And like, right. Where the fuck is Congress? Where the fuck are the courts? And like, eventually all of this stuff is going to be in the courts and work its way through. But we're in this very bizarre time when they're just allowing the executive to run with their total lawlessness. Like, it is not even a nod in the direction of something like a legal theory here. And I just don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. Like, anytime he's fucking standing there talking about how we're going to do this, we're going to do that, it's like, you can't. The system does not permit this. This is a pretty good example of the concentrated wealth leads to concentrated power theory. Because basically, like, the only reason why he's in a position to do anything is because he has a fuck ton of money. I don't know what the last count is, like, what, $250 billion or trillion rather. Like, he's got a lot of money, right? So that accords him this power that he would not otherwise have, right? And so, like, this is a textbook example, like, why it's not good to have so much wealth concentrated in just a few people, because then they can just throw their weight around, and you don't have to go through like a grueling campaign. You can just hitch your wagon to the winning candidate. And you can be supporting both candidates in the future. Like, if you're like a Elon Musk type going forward, you don't necessarily have to throw your weight behind one person. You can just fund both, and whomever wins, you can just say, okay, I want to do whatever I want, and let me have it. It would be helpful if it was a populist, because that seems to be the ticket. But money is the answer. He's in this position because he has a lot of money. Yeah. Is it anything to get so worked up about? Like, because like the TikTok thing is an ongoing thing also that speaks to lawlessness, which is that TikTok continues to operate in this country. It's on the Google Store. It's on the Apple App Store. Trump has basically said, I'm not going to enforce the law that Congress passed. And apparently we're just continuing as though the law never happened. A law that went into effect on January 19th. Again, speaks directly to total disregard for anything like the law and anything like a system. And instead, it's a deference to simply Trump's personal power. Oh, I know what I was going to say. The government is likely to shut down on March 4, or scheduled for shutdown essentially on March 14th at this point. We haven't heard a peep out of Congress on hardly any of this stuff. I have I don't know if I call this an official prediction or not. What do you think about this theory of how the rest of this year is going to unfold, which is that we will have this government shutdown and the Republicans in Congress simply won't do anything about it, that we will have an extended long-term shutdown. This will be the most do-nothing Congress in the history of Congress. They're going to continue to cede all of their authority and all of their influence attempting. Mike Johnson and congressional Republicans will attempt to do essentially nothing over the course of the year. And
that's not defense, right? That's just regular government?
I mean, I'm sure that they'll find a way to carve out the military and the and defense stuff, but like they will allow large portions of the government to go dark for an extended period of time, and they won't even fucking acknowledge that it's happening. They'll just say this is part of the president's plan. And by the way, it's a point that's been made before. In what way was this something that we voted for as a country? In what way is this something that Donald Trump ran on? Right? He ran on the price of eggs and the price of groceries. He ran on restoring us to something like a pre-COVID 2019 world, a pre-COVID economy. And instead what we're getting is this total executive lawlessness with Elon Musk going out and blowing up different federal agencies and paying no regard whatsoever to the rule of law. I don't know why. I mean, I know why the Republicans are fine with it. It's because as long as the Democrats and the media are freaking out, then the populist end of MAGAdom will be happy with what's going on. I just don't see how Congress reasserts itself in any meaningful way at any point coming up soon. Because, again, funding the government from March 14th through the end of September will be seen as a capitulation to the Democrats, no matter how you try to make it work, right? Like I don't see how that they can decide that we're going to fund government when the entire push of the first month of this administration has been how we're going to dismantle it.
You know, who knows what's going to happen? To me, like there will likely be a shutdown at some point during this Trump term. It makes little sense for it to happen in the middle of March because years ago, like in 2019, I think, Trump, I think, is the one that signed it. He signed the law saying that during shutdowns, you have to pay all employees when they get back, right? So basically, like, you're not saving any money by shutting down. The way they're going about getting rid of probationary employees, it's a little wobbly legally, but they could find some room to argue that in court to say, well, they were just onboarding and we just kind of stopped the onboarding, a year and a half into their 2-year probation or whatever, right? But actually shutting down, and then you do it for what, like months, right? So like whenever you reopen, you're not going to close forever, right? At some point you're going to reopen. You're going to pay back pay, basically a vacation to all the employees because of a law you signed 5 years ago.
Well, unless you say that we're not hiring any of these people back, unless you treat it as an extension of Doge. You treat the shutdown as an extension of Doge. You fucking go in. It's like, you remember in Jurassic Park when Sam Jackson was like, we can't shut everything down because if we shut everything down, we don't know what we've never done that before. We've never pulled the whole fucking plug and then hit the reset button and see how it comes back. So he was nervous about doing that, but there was no other choice, right? So they hit the reset button.
Hold on to your butts.
Maybe that's how they do this next level of triage here on the federal government, is you just pull the fucking plug and see which systems you really need to keep the park going moving forward, and then you slowly open those back up. And it's like, well, for 3 months, we didn't pay the National Park Service. It's fucking fine. It's just a bunch of forest and mountains. Right. And like, who fucking cares? So I guess we don't need them anymore. So we're not going to reboot that part of the system. Like, right. That to me, it's not an insane. Like it's fucking insane, obviously. Right. But like in terms of how they're going to shape this narrative, like it's not a crazy way of imagining how they're going to handle the shutdown situation.
Yeah, and I do wonder. I mean, I know that the margins are razor thin, but to have a united government, right? I mean, this is just the first couple of months into this the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives are controlled by one party. And 2 months into that, you're saying, or they're going to say like, we can't come to an agreement. I mean, how would that look for the party in power, right? There had been this rightward shift in the population as far as voters. They're like, hey, you guys are the normal people, right? You guys figured it out. And then like 2 months into that, you're like, we can't figure it out? Because
what if they've decided we don't want a country anymore in the way that we've had a country?
I mean, that's possible, but I mean, I don't think anyone ran on that, right? I mean, like, that's possible, but like 2 months into that, I mean, I can see this happening after the midterms. If the Democrats clawed back one of the chambers or both, then you're going to have an adversarial divided government, and then you can see a lot of chaos in the last 2 years of an 80-plus-year-old Trump, right? That would be chaotic, right? Like, who's running the show? What the hell's going on? Blah, blah, blah. But
the whole
first
thing,
2 years,
everything that's happening in Washington right now is happening in the person of Donald Trump and in the person of Elon Musk, right?
Right.
And we're not getting anything from Congress. Essentially, what the most that you're getting from Congress is Chuck Schumer embarrassing himself on camera because he's a truly humiliating individual. Like, just to have to watch Chuck Schumer be in the world is a humiliating experience for anyone who has to endure it, because it's embarrassing. It's just what it is. Again, maybe Mike Johnson has some theory of how he can keep the government going that aligns with Trump and Elon's current understanding of how things are going in Washington, but I don't know how he massages it into again, because it's not cost free for him within his own party to keep the government going. There's going to be 20 or 30 people who are Republicans, and he only has 2 or 3 votes to play with at full power, who are going to be opposed to pretty much anything that resembles fully funding the government for the next 6 months. Also, I mean, typically people will shut things down for an ask. Like, we're going to hold things up because I want this. Like some, deficit neutral thing or some whatever, right? But like, what would be the ask in this case? Like, I just fuck the whole thing. Like, because then how could you come to enough votes to fuck the whole thing? You can never come to enough votes there, right? So like, you would be setting yourself up in a lose-lose situation if you're the speaker. Like, wait, we could go into a shutdown, but like, what is our ask to get enough votes, like, from the Democrats? Like, it can't just be nothing. So like, to me, like, there is going to be a point where there's going to be a shutdown. It just makes a little sense to do it this early into what should be a honeymoon period, right? There should be. I'm open to whatever theory of the case that Mike Johnson is going to make. I don't have the imagination to get there. I don't know how he convinces, when this is the environment that we're currently existing in, which is government should do nothing except pay for your Social Security and your Medicare and your Medicaid and the Army, right? Right. Like, besides, but that's most of the government, though, right? That's most of the government. Like I was saying, 75% of the government are things that they're not interested in touching, but 25% is still an enormous amount of money and a huge amount of programs, right? And it's like, are we just about to commit to lopping off all of the rest of it? But the argument is undercut by the want to have I think what is it, like a $5 trillion tax cut over the next 10 years? So basically like $500 billion of tax cuts every year. Like, you can't make that up in cutting the National Park Service, right? So it's like the math doesn't add up. Like, whatever you're trying to do is you're not going to solve the debt issue with this. Well, we know how Trump solves the debt issue, and he ignores it or defaults on it, right? Like, that is the plan. I don't know if that gets put into practice, if somehow he is going to attempt to solve the debt issue by simply saying we're going to default on our obligations. Like, it wouldn't surprise me. He's done it many times personally, and he seems to be – he has expressed in the past a desire for the United States to simply default on that debt as a means of clearing it. Right. This is a person who is utterly unbound by anything like the rules at this point, and I don't think you can, like, overstate it. The thing that brought a lot of people comfort in the lead up to the election was, like, what's the worst that could happen, right? Like, he's just going to be essentially the TV president, and the rest of the government will continue to function more or less as normal. That is not the thing that we're getting here. Right?
Well, we're getting the thing that I wanted, which is for everybody to get exactly what they hoped for. All right, all right, people.
yeah,
Let's see
yeah,
how it goes. Let's see how it goes when you elect this guy and let him have whatever he wants. Let's see how it goes. I hope everybody's really happy with it in a year or 2 or 4.
I think, to save face, people that voted for that are going to pretend that they're into it, right? They're not going to say like, "Oh shit, I fucked up." Like it'll be like, "Oh yeah, this is what I wanted." The whole destruction of everything.
I hope that everybody gets exactly what they wanted. I hope that you shut down the largest employer, and let's see what happens. I've driven through many small towns that don't exist anymore because the largest employer no longer is in business, so the town could not sustain itself. We'll see.
Yeah. It's too late to get into the 60 Minutes piece about Germany and their crackdown on what they deem to be unacceptable speech. I'll make sure there's a link to the segment in the show note. I think it's worth watching just because it is utterly anathema to how I think the world ought to be, they frame it in terms of, look, Germans are rule followers, and what we want are more rule followers, and it's against the rules to be mean to people, and so we're going to stop people from being mean to people on the internet. And it's funny to me that they frame it in terms of rule following because, not to go the full Maggie Brennan here, but it wasn't free speech that gave us the Holocaust or gave us the genocide and gave us World War II. It was a bunch of people who thought that they were just supposed to follow the rules, and the rules were bad, right? And sometimes the rules are really fucking bad, and the German willingness to go along with what the authority is telling you is the right thing. Got the world into big bad trouble back in the 1930s and the 1940s.
Yeah, I think you're right when it comes to Maggie's point, but there is something to be said about letting an ideology fester long enough to where it takes hold in society.
I think it's important to combat ideologies that are hateful, and you combat them with more speech, not by trying to shut down that speech, because shutting down that speech never works. And if in the process of trying to shut down that speech, you also say that we're going to arrest you or confiscate your property and fine you thousands of dollars because you called a politician a penis on the internet, then that's not okay, right?
Yeah.
And that the casualty of that sort of an anti-free speech regime, it's primarily the reason that you stand against it is because it will not last. People simply will not tolerate it in big, bad, rebellious sort of ways, right? The reactionary instinct to being told that you're not allowed to call a politician a penis is much worse than the impact of somebody calling a politician a penis.
Right.
It's 6:01 on a Tuesday morning, and we were with state police as they raided this apartment in northwest Germany. Inside, 6 armed officers searched a suspect's home, then seized his laptop and cell phone. Prosecutors say those electronics may have been used to commit a crime. The crime, posting a racist cartoon online. At the exact same time, across Germany, more than 50 similar raids played out. Part of what prosecutors say is a coordinated effort to curb online hate speech in Germany.
What's the typical reaction when the police show up at somebody's door and they say, hey, we believe you wrote this on the internet?
They say, in Germany we say, das wird man wohl doch mal sagen dürfen. So we are here with crimes of talking, posting on internet, and the people are surprised that this is really illegal to post these kind of words.
They don't think it was illegal?
No, they don't think it was illegal. And they say, no, that's my free speech. And we say, no, yeah, free speech as well, but it also has its limits.
Interpreting those limits is part of the job for Dr. Matthias Fink, Svenja Meininghaus, and Frank Michael Lau, a few of the state prosecutors tasked with policing Germany's robust hate speech laws online. After its darkest chapter, Germany strengthened its speech laws. As prosecutors explain it, the German Constitution protects free speech, but not hate speech. And here's where it gets tricky. German law prohibits any speech that could incite hatred or is deemed insulting.
It's illegal to display Nazi symbolism, a swastika, or deny the Holocaust. That's clear. Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes. Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher if you insult someone in the internet.
Why?
Because in internet, it stays there. If we are talking here face to face, you insult me, I insult you, okay, finish. But if you're in the internet, if I insult you or a politician...
That sticks around forever.
Yeah.
The prosecutors explain German law also prohibits the spread of malicious gossip, violent threats, and fake quotes.
If somebody posts something that's not true, and then somebody else reposts it or likes it, are they committing a crime?
Yeah, in the case of reposting, it is a crime as well, because the reader can't distinguish whether you just invented this or just reposted it. That's the same for us.
The punishment for breaking hate speech laws can include jail time for repeat offenders. But in most cases, a judge levies a stiff fine and sometimes keeps their devices.
How do people react when you take their phones from them?
They are shocked. It's a kind of punishment if you lose your smartphone. It's even worse than the fine you have to pay.
Because your whole life is typically on your phone now.
But it was a 2021 case involving a local politician named Andy Grote that captured the country's attention. Grote complained about a tweet that called him a Pimmel, a German word for the male anatomy. That triggered a police raid and accusations of excessive censorship by the government. As prosecutors explained to us, in Germany, it's okay to debate politics online, but it can be a crime to call anyone a Pimmel, even a politician.
So it sounds like you're saying it's okay to criticize a politician's policy, but not to say, I think you're a jerk and an idiot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Comments like "you're son of a bitch," excuse me for using, but these words has nothing to do with political discussions or a contribution to a discussion.
The Muslim population in America isn't that large, but like if you had a bunch of crazy like Taliban level, ISIS level mosques around the country, and they're spewing a lot of just nonsense, right? But nothing like actionable, like I'm gonna stab this person tomorrow, like where you can charge them an assault. But they're just saying a lot of like ISIS related things. Freedom, right? It's still freedom. Hey, I'm saying freedom things. And then people start acting on those things, those free things that I'm saying, right? That would be clamped down pretty quickly, because it is like we've seen this story before. Like we're gonna have some planes hitting a tower eventually, right? So like it is a difficult thing to navigate. I grant you that, but you can't just sit on your hands. There's got to be something that can be done to kind of get ahead of any possible danger that comes down the road.
You say it's something that we need to figure out how to deal with. I guess I don't know. I don't know what the correct. I don't know how you go about policing speech on the internet in a way that doesn't have terrible externalities in terms of the reaction to it. Like I just don't know how you go about it.
When it comes to democracies, right? What is that old adage? Democracy is two wolves and a sheep deciding what's for dinner or whatever. Basically, there are drawbacks to democracy when it comes to like mob rule, like just the passions of the people just deciding some dumb thing, and then everybody has to kind of live by it. And so what you want to do is you want to come up with a system that protects minority rights, and there are certain things that can't be voted on. This is the reality, and you kind of navigate around this reality.
And can't be usurped by the executive, right?
Yeah, yes. Right. So that's what you want to have. But if you have it to where it's this volatile environment to where, whatever happens, it's going to create a destabilized kind of thing. So like basically like thinking it in that way, like instead of just saying vote up and down and that's it, whatever happens, like think of like how do we stave off the worst excess of mob rule, and then come up with a system that has that, and then you can work from that. Like something like that when it comes to free speech. Like leave people be, let people speak. It's just counterproductive to try to clamp down on somebody saying somebody looks like a penis or whatever, right? That's just not the way you should go about a society. But what do you do about things that are real and dangerous and could become a thing down the road? Like, there's got to be something. I mean, there's a lot of smart people out there. There's got to be some sort of mechanism you can come up with.
There aren't a lot of smart people out there.
Yeah, I guess not, to handle that. But you can't just sit on your hands, is all I'm saying.
Yeah. I don't know. I have this... My reaction to a lot of the news and what we've been seeing for the last month is it just seems like fewer people than ever want to believe that we have a country. Like there seems to be this sort of pervasive idea that it would be fine if everything that we've known about the way government and nations work for the last, like in the post-World War II order, just went away. And like, I don't like that feeling. It feels wildly destabilizing. I don't like that. Whatever. That's where I'll leave it, because anything that I would say beyond that would tend toward the hysterical and tend toward the where are we going in a very dark way. And I don't want to believe that the result of making this man the president for 4 more years results in the unthinkable. And I guess it comes down to my underlying conservatism, small c conservatism, about a belief in institutions and the fact that they held the first time around. I can only hope that they will continue to hold this time around. I will be heartened the first time he loses at the Supreme Court, and the sooner the better. Get thee to the Supreme Court as quickly as possible, and show me that there is some backbone in the system still. That all of the executive lawlessness that's been on display since early morning on January 20th, when Joe Biden started pardoning people and Trump didn't quit as the day wore on, that there is some sort of response to this from the system that is going to give him something to get real fucking pissy and mad about, right? Because up to this point, he hasn't had any reason to get real pissy and mad. We need the judges and the judicial system to show us some backbone at some point in the next couple of months, because right now it feels like he's running roughshod over everything, and there's nothing that anyone can do about it.
Jesus Christ, you talk a lot. Jesus fucking Christ.
You've been listening to Cast Iron Brains, a podcast with Bob and Abe. Find the show on Substack, brainiron.substack.com, for more from us, including the revived Billboard Hot 100 game. Holy shit, we need some levity and fun. Go check that out, brainiron.substack.com, where we talk about the music of today and yesterday, and yesterday's yesterday as well, in the event of this week's show. The opening and closing themes of the show were composed by Mark Gillig, tetramermusic.com, TETRAMER music.com, for more from him. Hey, we only discussed the obnoxious Trump news of the week. I hope you made it to the movies and escaped our current awful reality in favor of Hollywood diversion.
Oh, wow, you keep talking so much.
I did. I actually went to the movie twice again. The winter months, I like to go more than once. I went to go see Hard Eyes, which is a movie that's equal parts horror and romantic comedy.
Yeah.
It was like a decent enough movie, but what's weird is it's as if they took the cast from one of those like Hallmark Christmas movies and they inserted them into a horror movie screenplay. Like basically, like they're behaving.
Heart Eyes. I thought you said Hard Eyes, and I was getting no Google returns for that.
Hard Eyes, yes. Maybe it sounds the same when I say it that way. But yes, Heart Eyes. So the killer has heart eyes, and it gets very stabby. By the way, I will say, other horror movies, sometimes the killer will kind of half-ass it. Sometimes they kind of like take their time to kill and give an opportunity for people to like run away. This guy, not to spoil it, there's this evil guy, but there's more than one. Like they go after it. As soon as they see like a target, they're not fucking around. They go into kill mode immediately. So I did appreciate that. Like they were not beating around the bush. They were going after it.
Good.
But you know, again, it was fine. I mean, if you're into horror movies, you like it. I also went to go see the latest Marvel movie, Captain America: Brave New World.
Oh, did that finally come out? I feel like we've been seeing commercials with Harrison Ford as angry Red Hulk for quite some time.
Yes, it finally came out this weekend. It was, whatever. All these movies are the same. Very forgettable movie. I still don't understand why, because I've watched many of these big budget Marvel movies over the years through the Avengers and the Iron Mans and whatnot. I don't know why they needed to replace Captain America, like with another existing character. Like I did not read comic books growing up, so I don't know what the story behind that is.
None of it
But
matters.
that's what happened. The Falcon guy now is the Captain American guy, and the movie spends time like, oh, you don't deserve it, man. Like you're not that other guy, Steve. What's his face? And he's like, yeah, I know, I'm different. Da 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 da. Always good to see Harrison Ford as president of something. It's always like, oh, I remember this role. I mean, he's
Does he
much
turn
older
out to
now.
be evil president, though? It seems like he's bad.
So this was a little weird. So, he is like, I didn't know there was another Hulk. Like, there's the normal Hulk, right? The green one, right? He gets mad, like, uh-oh. And then he becomes bigger, and he's green. But all of a sudden...
That should be the canon description of a Hulk from Abe. I want Abe to describe all of the superheroes in similar fashion.
Isn't that how it goes? In this case, the president, he's like a sinister type, but he has some redeeming qualities. And if he gets stressed out and upset, he becomes hulky. Oh, I get a little crazy.
So was he blasted with some other form of radiation? Because
they don't get into that.
They don't explain it. He's just
He's a Snickers.
He's a politician,
hungry.
and then he's like a general. I don't know. I'm sure he's been mentioned in movies that I've seen that I've forgotten about in the past, but like he's a general who turned into a politician who became the president. And for most of the movie, it's Harrison Ford, whatever the character's name is. And the last 20 minutes, he becomes crazy. And what's funny about this is he's at the White House and he's being peppered with too many questions and he doesn't care for it. Like, what the fuck? Like, because he made a deal with the devil and they have figured it out. Like, 'cause the devil is leaking it to the press. Like, hey, he made a deal with me. And he gets so upset that he becomes the Red Hulk. Like, the president becomes a red monster. Like, I thought it was a little on the nose.
Bit on the nose, yeah.
And the strangest thing happens. His Secret Service, sworn to protect the president, turn on him because he gets a little red. Like,
this is...
Okay.
I did a Google here. So this character was William Hurt in the previous Hulk movies.
Oh, is that right?
That's why it's Harrison Ford. I guess William Hurt is dead.
I started watching the show on Hulu called Paradise, which, have you heard of it?
No, Paradise. Who's in that?
It's about... So Sterling K. Brown plays a Secret Service agent.
Yes.
That's like the president's detail after he's president. President is played by James Marsden.
Okay.
I mean, not giving too much away, but in the first episode, the former president is found by our Secret Service buddy, shot dead.
Okay.
It sort of relates to your thing.
Yeah, but it just shocked me because it was so fast. You know that movie with Will Smith and everybody's dead because some virus got out of hand?
I Am Legend?
And he has this companion dog, this dog, right?
Yes.
And the dog catches the disease. Like, fuck you, dog, right? But it takes him a second for him to come to grips with the reality of he's got to do away with a dog, right? Like there was a scene where it's like, fuck, I got to choke out this dog. He took some time to kind of process what had to be done. The Secret Service agents immediately,
right,
as soon as fuck him, he's not the president anymore, and they start shooting at him.
They know what movie they're in. They're in the movie where the president is evil, and they get to shoot the motherfucker.
They don't even look at each other like, what do we do? There's no regulations about this. And I'm sure there isn't. There's no regulation that says...
there is. It's in there. You don't know because you're not in the Secret Service, but it's, page 87, Annex B.
Yeah. and if
the president turns evil, you can shoot him.
Yeah, shoot him. Anyways, the shooting did nothing because he's mad. Then it gets... and then it gets sorted out. Somehow he's still alive at the end. and he resigned from the office. He's like, I can't be trusted to be president because I get a little crazy, and so like
as it turns out,
for the good of the country, I'm going to fuck
Snickers
off to prison, and the movie kind of ends that way. It was it was fine. It started and ended. It wasn't too long. No complaints. The kids. This was a very skewed, very young. A lot of young kids were in this theater, and they were into it.
You were at a children's movie.
Did it make any money?
It made like $100 million, but I don't think it's gonna just fall off the cliff next week. I assume because like anybody that was interested in watching this has seen it. I think they should have just ended it with Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, they fucked up by not doing a hard reboot of the entire property at the end of the Avengers Endgame run, where they were insisting that, no, you definitely still want to keep coming to these movies. It's like, no, we just averted universal apocalypse.
Right.
Right? Like we raised the stakes to this impossible high level. You can't expect me to fucking show up on Monday after that sort of a weekend here.
Yeah.
Like they really needed to. I mean, far be it from me to tell them how to make their money over there at Disney, but it seems like people have largely stopped caring after the Avengers run ended.
They should, maybe they just continue making those Disney Plus shows and just leave that be. But like, I don't know. It didn't seem like it's going to do that great. I don't know how much money it cost them to make this, but it seemed like a lot. But it was mostly fine. But I'm never going to watch it again. On the TV front, I want to watch the first episode of the White Lotus season 3. Mm-hmm. I do like the weekly releases in general. This could have used a 2-episode kind of like release, the first 2 episodes, because I didn't get a good vibe of the people just yet. You know, in previous seasons, there's like that cokehead guy in one of the seasons, the general manager or whatever of the resort, right. the crazy guy. There was not like that sort of character this time. It was kind of a slower start. I was surprised that they did not go back to their theme, the opening credits. This is like a totally different
vibe. It's 3 years. They had 2 different. This is the 3rd version of it, right? They had
but
a different one for each of the first 2 years.
It didn't keep. They were doing remixes, kind of like The Wire did. And the first 2 seasons were kind of like that. The second season was slightly different than the first, but it was the same kind of theme. But this one was like, I don't know, they're just making up some shit to be in line with whatever happens in Thailand. I don't know what kind of music they're into over there, but it seemed like I don't know what the fuck this is. But
Mike White has a very, very dim view of his fellow man.
Yes,
I think it's safe to say. And I really love his writing. Like I think he's obviously a very strong writer. I don't know that I want to watch him set up these bowling pins to knock them down again. Like I'm going to watch it. It's a beautiful show. Like just looking at it, it's fucking gorgeous.
The monkeys.
And the monkeys are fun, and they're not shy about giving you establishing shots that are worth the wait, right? Like a lot of times when you're watching one of these fucking shows, and it's like, boy, we could have cut 10 minutes out of this fucking thing just by getting rid of the stupid drone shot and the establishing shot outside the building. But like, no, this is a good filmmaker or a good television maker who knows what he's doing with his camera and with his writing. But I just, at some point, like, are we just going to watch him be mad at these incredibly self-satisfied rich people who are both self-satisfied and also entirely miserable in their fucking lives?
Every single character that he has written that is a guest at these resorts is a guest at my salon.
Oh,
every
really?
single fucking one of them. So, sorry that he's seen them and you get to stay home and not have to deal with them. But look, they're around. They're around, and they're absolutely accurate.
The world is full of purely self-interested narcissists.
No, high-end businesses are full of those.
Yeah, I just don't know how many times you can make the same point about these people being awful and still have it be meaningful.
At least 3 times.
At least 3 times, apparently. But yeah, I mean, whatever. I also enjoyed, like, it for what it's worth. It's an enjoyable hour of television, and that's worth whatever it's worth. I don't know. He's gonna have to wow me in some other way this time. And I'm
they do that thing where at the beginning they show you what happens, or at least give you a snippet of what happened, and then they go back a week and they start it off that way again. Like, how did they end up in this position? Like, where somebody's shooting at this place?
Right. Also, felt more uncomfortable this time for some reason because it's like
gun.
It's a mass shooting. Like, I don't like mass shootings. I'm not looking forward to how this all works out 8 episodes from now or whatever it is.
Also, if you weren't sold on this meditation thing, like, this guy's gonna forever associate this breathing bullshit with just violence. Like, it'd be kind of hard for him to calm down going forward.
Well, no, because his mom's been into it forever.
What's with giving the young American black the one who recognizes that it's gunshots happening? Like, that seems a bit on the nose, Mike.
He's not a guest at my salon, I'll tell you that much.
Hey, this is familiar.
What did we watch, Lori?
You want the rundown of what we watched?
Sure.
Okay. Severance, Blind Date, Carry On, White Lotus, and we started Shoresy. I started it again.
Yeah. So Severance, as I recall, was a pretty good episode this week. And then
Blind Date.
Blind Date we put on after Severance just to have something on the television. We hadn't watched Blind Date since back when it would just be on cable.
It used to be on.
What is Blind Date?
It was what was... Abe.
It's a terrible
It's what
show.
used to be on TV when you got home from work.
Roger Lodge, American game show host, who's now a radio guy for like the Los Angeles Angels.
Okay.
It's like pop-up video, but it's people on a date.
Gotcha. Okay.
They just have these two awful human beings. Overwhelmingly, they're awful human beings. Go on a blind date.
I don't know where Mike White gets it.
And then they make fun of them, both in voiceover and also in pop-up video style. And it's just the bottom rung. Like, apparently, because we watched The Floor a couple of weeks ago,
we are still watching
we
The Floor.
We went to seek out something even worse than The Floor.
The Floor is worse.
On the
No
Roku
way.
channel.
No. Because Blind Date was a product of its time.
Yeah. Also racist. Lot of very subtle racism. And not so subtle racism.
Yeah.
Anyway, we watched a couple episodes of Blind Date, and it was worse than you remember. Yeah. And then we watched Carry On, which is the fucking Arrested Development. What's his name?
Oh, that's
Jason Bateman.
Jason Bateman and Joel Edgerton.
A little white guy. He's just little.
In what is basically like a Die Hard 2 remake of a sort. It's like Die Hard 2 meets...
That movie Inside Man? Not Inside Man. The one where
the phone booth
Colin
one?
Farrell's on the payphone.
Phone booth, yeah. It's like
phone booth.
It's like Phone Booth, or that Rachel McAdams and
Cillian Murphy?
And Cillian Murphy movie.
No.
Red Eye?
It's not like that.
Red Eye.
No.
It's not unlike that.
No, she's not. She doesn't have a thing.
A bad guy is trying to co-opt a not bad guy into...
I don't like what he did to her in that movie.
Being a bad guy.
Yeah, I think I watched this Carry On. This is where he's like a TSA agent, and then
Wait. The premise of the movie: he's a TSA agent.
Yes.
Who wants a raise?
Yes.
So he goes over to his boss and is like, "Hey, can I have a raise?" And I immediately was like, "Oh no, this isn't how it works. That guy can't give you a raise.
Not
that guy
how
can't give
government
you.
works
You got to
at all.
just fill out your paperwork. Just file the promotion packet and just wait, and you'll get a promotion. Magic.
In a movie that is full of things that you simply cannot believe because they are absurd and not in keeping with reality. The idea that a government employee
couldn't handle it.
would
Ask his boss.
would through a display of hard work and commitment to the job convince his boss to give him a raise, and that's how that system works. That was the thing that was hardest to believe about this patent absurdity of
It's
of
fucking
a movie.
LA. They don't know anything.
I wanted to enjoy the dumbness of this movie, but it just made me mad. Like, it's just such a stupid
It's just
movie.
kind of how you are, though.
But I can enjoy a bad movie. This movie was just... It wasn't bad enough to be worth your time, unfortunately.
Bob's mad because the character he thought was going to die didn't die.
It's true. We introduce, in the first 5 minutes of this movie, we meet the main character's buddy at work, and he's introduced as someone who is going to be seeing his family, going on vacation with his family at the end of his shift, right? And he's black, and he's the main character's friend. And it's like, those are three things that guarantee that this person is going to be dead by the end of the first act. Or second act at the latest. And he's in the last scene of the movie. He lives through the whole fucking thing. I was so mad at myself for immediately picking out a guy that was definitely going to be dead who didn't end up dead.
Subvert your expectations, That's what they did.
Yeah, that's exactly what this fucking
That's
movie
what the
did.
movie did.
Yeah.
And we also watched the first episode of Shoresy because it's after years of watching TV by myself on the treadmill, I finally finished something and didn't like that Bob hasn't seen it.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's a pretty funny 22 minutes there.
Absolutely. The episodes, having watched the whole first 3 seasons, do not get longer than 28 minutes. That is the absolute longest. There are some that are under 20 minutes.
It's an incredibly filthy show, and do not watch it with anyone who is
very crass,
who can be upset about such things. But very funny, and this seems like it will be worth my time in the long run. Also, in the closing credits, you watch it pop up, and it's like this was only made possible but through a grant from the Canadian government or something. Okay. Like there's 3 different screens where it's like, we got money from the Canadian government to make this fucking movie. It's like, here is an example of something that government can do that is actually fine. Like, should this be how entertainment products are funded? Maybe not. But also, like, this is the world that we live in.
Also,
sometimes
the show costs like $15 to make.
Yeah, sure. But like it's like when people get mad about the fact that PBS or NPR get a tiny little bit of government money or taxpayer money. It's like, fucking turn on PBS on a random Wednesday and tell me that it wasn't worth your time. Like, they put out fucking quality programming. And for the pittance that we throw in their general direction as a tax-paying public, it's generally going to be worth it.
Speaking of PBS, I caught a couple of episodes on the Apple TV streaming service they're doing a Vietnam War documentary, and I think last week or a couple of weeks ago I mentioned
the one from a few years ago, or is this a different one?
This is a very new thing, or at least it's relatively new within the last year. But I mentioned before that Netflix was doing an O.J. Simpson doc, and I'm like, why even bother when ESPN has a superior product that you can watch at any time? And I feel similarly here with a Vietnam War doc on Apple TV. Ken Burns.
Right, Ken Burns did the Ken Burns one. What are you doing?
Just watch that one. That is a perfect documentary. It was like 17 hours. I mean, how many more hours of the war do you need? This one is like a different perspective, but it's still not as good. And so, if you're going to watch one Vietnam War doc, watch the good one.
Yeah. All right. Was that it, Lori? Anything else on our list?
Lots of your buddies on the slot machine.
Yeah, just watching my mindless slot machine videos. I nothing to say about those. They're bad, probably, but whatever.
You've been playing your Monopoly and your grocery shopping game.
I gotta delete these fucking games off of my phone. It's getting out of hand. But
you have slot machine apps? What's going on?
No, I'm not in that much trouble.
It's the same.
It's basically the same thing, though. So I did this thing. I downloaded. I've talked before about Monopoly on the phone. I mean,
this grocery sorting game is amazing.
I put Monopoly also on my tablet as well, and have a second account.
2 screens.
For the Monopoly, and I befriended myself from one version of the game to the other so that I can gift stickers to my primary account. Because a thing that's happened in this fucking game, and the reason that I haven't deleted it yet, is because they run these sort of timed things where you're trying to accomplish collect 150 stickers in the next 45 days, and then you get this big reward, right? And in every single one of these time periods, it's like 45-day or 40-day or 30-day, whatever it is, I get to the end of the time period, and I need just 1 or 2 more stickers in order to complete the set, in order to win the big reward. And I haven't achieved it, right? And so I said, this fucking time, I'm going to install this app on another device, and that one is just going to be dedicated to trying to get my primary account all 150 fucking stickers, right? So now I'm double fisting the monopoly.
He'll have both screens.
Have them both going, trying to collect the fucking stickers, and it's insane, this thing that I've done.
Yeah.
But I've committed to winning the fucking big prize once, and if I can't do it with 2 apps going, trying to get the one, like it'll be the end. So the good news is, either way, and this is, I think it's 11 days until this current collection period ends. Either I'm going to accomplish the goal and I'm going to get the big prize and I will be satisfied and I can delete the app because I finally fucking did the thing that I hadn't been able to do, or I will have proven to myself sufficiently that the only way to actually get the prize is to spend the hundreds of dollars that they're always asking you to spend within the app, and I have so far spent $0.
I see.
On this app, and I will never spend a single fucking penny on the goddamn app.
He also hasn't asked me to participate and give him stickers.
No, that is that's
Oh,
next.
that's psychotic. Okay.
I'm not going to ask loved ones to participate in this. This is a sickness and a disease of myself.
Instead, you'll just not talk to me for hours.
Yeah.
If
while you stare
Bob,
at Monopoly.
if you can't achieve your goal through this scheme that you're running, are you gonna write like a consumer alert to say like this is a scam? They are forcing you to pay for this to work. Otherwise, don't
this
bother.
is as far as my public service goes, is acknowledging my own shame and humiliation at the tail end of a podcast that I hope no one is still listening to. Abe, have you got anything else for us tonight?
Nope.
Well, I guess that's all we've got for you.
Sorry.
Well, I think you're doing it on purpose now. Well, I guess that's all we've got for you tonight then, and we will talk to you next time.
Later.
Did you happen to catch 60 Minutes this week?
No, other than the White Lotus, I did not catch any television, anything this weekend. Who was featured on 60 Minutes?
So they did an opening segment on USAID issues. Then they did a segment on in Germany, these fucking psychos are tracking down people who say mean things on the internet and fining them and confiscating their phones and laptop computers because of they don't have free speech because you can't be mean on the internet.
From the state or like some private?
Yeah, the police.
No
the fucking,
shit.
So Germany had a real problem once with hate speech.
Anyway, we'll get into that. It's not what I we'll talk about it later. But then the closer was an interview with Chalamet the God, your boy, Timothy Chalamet. And he says something at the beginning of the interview, which they used
he
in
gives
the...
everything 190% or something?
170%.
170.
So we've gone from give it your all, 100%, to 110% being what you need to give in order to get things done in this world, to now Chalamet the God insisting that it's 170% is the maximum level of effort that is required.
You die at 171.
Right.
So it's
you
fair.
would think people would then come back to the fold and realize that 100% is the most you can give. 110% was always a farce.
The most you can give, maybe, working for the
1,000%,
fucking government.
1,000,000%. I mean, we're just making things
It's
up. Once you go
becoming,
beyond
as I said
100%.
when I first heard it, it's just an increasingly arbitrary thing that's
Yes.
going on here.
People are never happy. 100% is all you can give. That's all you can give.
That is what I would expect a federal employee to say.
I bet you didn't go to work today,
You know
did
what?
you?
You know what happens? I could probably find it and share a screen. I book up a day.
Yeah.
And it shows the percentage booked.
Oh, yeah.
There are days that I'm fucking 110% booked.
Right. That can happen.
Private sector. That's what the private sector does.
You can double book, but you can't put more
Double
effort
booking.
than possible.
No, that only gets me to 100%. 110% means I'm working more than I am actually able to do.
I see.
Which happens a lot. I'm fucking exhausted.
The flagrant foul is the most Abe-ass named foul
It really is.
in the history of fouls.
The proceeding was created with 100% human content.